Welcome. Now I would like to welcome you all to our first session, which is called Resilience and Inner Work in the Field of Social Change. And I would like you to welcome our panelists, our speakers, who are Josha Lautner, the Wellbeing Catalyst at Impact Hub Network and the Wellbeing Project, and co-founder of at Impact Hub Munich. Josha, say hi. And Elіс Ремсі, who is a lead of storytelling and communications at Wellbeing Project. So, and now I give the floor to our panelists. So, Josha, the floor is yours.
Thank you a lot, Marina. It's actually not me who's going to open. It's Elіс.
Thank you so much. I'm feeling very happy to be with you all today and extremely grateful that I'm able to talk to you all with wonderful Josha about something which we feel is deeply, deeply important in society, and also in the way that we work and the way that we connect with each other, and that is well-being. To give you a little bit of background about me and who I am, my name is Elіс Ремсі, and I lead storytelling, communications and marketing for the Wellbeing Project. And I'll give a little bit of background about the Wellbeing Project shortly and what the Wellbeing Project is, if you've not yet heard of us. I've basically been working in marketing and branding and communications all of my career. But I really find that social change is something which is very important to me, and it's a space in which I really love to work and to give my time and energy, and I have a huge amount of passion for that. So in my previous role, I was in marketing and branding for Cancer Research UK, which is the largest charity in the UK. And it really opened my eyes to the breadth of change that we are able to achieve in society if we work together. And so, yes, that was in the UK, where I'm originally from. My career has been in London, largely, but I'm now based in Paris with a wonderful team in Paris. And I love to travel, and as a person, I absolutely love painting, the visual arts, and I find that it's a wonderful outlet actually for my own well-being. And in terms of my own well-being as well, I also feel that I'm very much only just beginning to scratch the surface of what that means for me, and the journey that I'm embarking on to understand my own well-being and who I am. So that's a little bit of background about me, and delighted to be here with you all. And I'll pass it back to you, Josha.
Thank you, Elís. It's a great honor for me to be here with you as well. It's an honor because Impact Hub Odessa has been part of my own entrepreneurial journey for the past 8 years. I've co-created Impact Hub Munich 8 years ago, and Marina was one of my first collaborators within the Impact Hub network, and Impact Hub Odessa actually as well. And why this is special to me as well is because my grandmother is from the Ukraine, or was. She's dead now, but she's still with me in a way. And last year, it was the first time that I got to visit Ukraine and Odessa, and especially. So now having this opportunity to talk to you about well-being and the connection to social change, it just fills me with a lot of joy. Myself, I'm German. I'm based in Munich, currently moving to France with my new partner. So there's lots of excitement in my life right now. And me personally, I've been a part of the social entrepreneurship, social innovation ecosystem since 15 years. And the reason why I got involved in the Wellbeing Project and in that topic is because in my own experience, creating a social business is one of the most joyful, but also one of the most hardest things that you can do, because of the financial pressure, because that you want to create. I want to create something good for the world, and that creates pressure from different sides that can just make it very hard to deal with. And I found myself walking on the edge of burnout for quite a long time. So 3 years ago, I decided to take a sabbatical for a year to see what I can do in order to not need to, be on the edge all the time, but rather arrive at a place where I can still be involved in social change, but thrive. And not only personally, but also from a business perspective. So, and then I just realized that many entrepreneurs and change makers all around the world have the same struggle to deal with: uncertainty, complex environments, pressure from multiple sides. So that's why I realized it is so important for us as a whole ecosystem of social change makers to just understand and explore for ourselves how we can thrive, how we can be resilient in this ever-changing context that we are in, and how can we learn from one another in this? How can we support each other as well? Yeah. So that's why I'm here, and I would love to give you now a little bit of input about what you can expect from the session and also what's not. So Ellis and I are going to talk to you a little bit about the Wellbeing Project, so you can get to know this very exciting movement that's taking place all around the world. We're going to present to you some of the findings from our 5-year research that we have been doing, and we're going to talk about the concept of well-being itself. And then in the end, we're going to turn towards the question of resilience, which especially today with COVID and everything that's happening all around, seems to become more and more important. And when we say resilience, we mean it in a way that is related to us as individuals, dealing with these kind of complex environments, but also as business and communities. And that is very much connected. We'll close the session by just sharing a little bit of the resources that you can tap into if you want to know more about well-being, how to integrate it in your organization, and where to start. Ellis and I also have an invitation for all of you, and that is be as active as you wish in the chat, to share your own experiences, to share your own questions about well-being, how it relates to your own organization. We also invite you to share what you're struggling with. Because we only have 50 minutes now, but the Wellbeing Project and the coalition of over 200 organizations worldwide are researching into how can we support change makers better all around the world. So whatever you share in the chat with us, the questions, the experiences, will serve the research that we're all doing on behalf of the field of social change. So that's Alice's and my invitation for you to be really active in the chat and to, feel free to share whatever you feel comfortable with. So with that, if I haven't forgotten anything, that's our introduction. And Alice is now going to lead us a little bit into what is the Wellbeing Project? What do we do?
Yes, thank you. And technical team, I'm just about to share my screen so that I'm able to share a few slides. So what is the Wellbeing Project and what does our mantra mean? Our mantra is well-being inspires well-doing. So as has just been touched upon, the Wellbeing Project is it's a very specific and actually rather complex project, which has been, it's very much an emergent project, I would say, and we are learning so much from all that we are doing. It's a systemic global initiative, and our key aim is to shift, I guess, the culture of social change. So what we're trying to do is individual and organizational well-being can actually be cultivated. And what we're doing that, and we're doing that in a multitude of ways. And what I'll do is I'll explain further to you how the project is structured in terms of our pillars in order to bring this into action and into fruition. So what is this culture within social change that we are trying to, or in social impact and the social impact sector, that we are trying to change? So ultimately, there are a number of professionals, and there is a challenge that we have identified, where a number of social impact professionals and leaders of the big societal changes that we need to enact are really facing a huge amount of burnout and exhaustion. And actually we have seen that this is almost sometimes a badge of honor in the sector, to be seen to be working at these levels and to be exhausted is a kind of badge of honor. And what we're trying to do is really shift the culture so that the way in which people lead and the way in which people enact social change starts from within. And the way that we have drawn that inspiration is from a number of phenomenal leaders, for example, Martin Luther King, Mandela, Gandhi, and those wonderful leaders of social change, they went on very big inner journeys throughout their lives, and it meant that they were able to lead in a way which was able to create massive difference and to start to break down some of the huge challenges that we face in society. So we draw a lot of inspiration from those individuals and the inner journeys that they went on. So where are we now? The project was started with this huge goal in mind, and what have we been doing since our conception? So the initiative now is actually a global focal point in the field of social change for recognizing the importance of inner well-being and inner development. So now we are a coalition of over 200 global and regional organizations, and we're trying with those organizations to begin to weave well-being into our organizational structures, support programs, and personal narratives. We've also built a credible research base, which is both qualitative and quantitative, and that really is to show and to explore the connection between inner development and how social change happens. Yeah, and also we are trying to catalyze, as I've mentioned, the emergence of a narrative in social change that prioritizes well-being both in the sector and beyond. And this is just a sample of the organizations who are within our project community, and there are a number that we are working very closely with. How our work is structured, I've touched on slightly there, but to just explain a little bit further. So the inner development program and our model programs in pillar 1 that you can see here, so the inner development program and the organizational exploratory program. Both of these are really existing to demonstrate and both learn. So the inner development program is supporting experienced social entrepreneurs in finding and nurturing a deeper sense of well-being within themselves. So it's a very, very supportive program. And it means that those people who are, their work touches millions of people often, when they've gone through this program and the way in which they are able to impact those lives beyond their own, it changes. And I'll explore that a bit further in the session later as well. The organizational exploratory program is really how can organizations put well-being at the heart of their cultures. Research and evaluation is, as I've explained, the connection between inner work and the quality of social change. And also we're exploring pathways of weaving inner well-being into the heart of organizational cultures, but really researching that. So it's actually quite a new field, and we're learning a huge amount from this pillar, and it's very much growing. And as we mentioned, this informing research that we are doing. Learning, convening and enabling, this pillar 3, is convening all of these global and regional leaders so that they can actually learn from each other and they can work together to shift the culture. And we'll explain later why we think that could be an incredibly useful way of carrying out work. And in terms of the research that we've done, it's actually proven to produce better, stronger results as well. The final pillar is to do with the catalyzing of well-being in the social sector and beyond. So how do we do that? And this is where my role comes in, is really to leverage and to share the voices of all of these leaders who go through these programs with us so that others are able to learn from their journeys. And how can we spread this message? Really, it travels wider, it really becomes embedded and woven into both the social change sector and into mainstream culture. So that's a little bit more about the project, and I will actually, I'll hand back actually now, Josha, so you can explain a bit more about co-creation and how we begin to define well-being.
Yeah, with pleasure, Ellis. Thank you so much for this overview. I would love to also invite again everyone who would love to know more about the Wellbeing Project, and there's questions coming up, to just put these questions in the chat and in the Q&A, so we can also directly interact with you and go down to your questions. As we're 200 participants, it's just not possible to get back to every question, but we hope to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have anything that comes up to your mind that speaks to you, just let us know. What I'd love to speak to is that while the Wellbeing Project is a complex structure in itself, our main vision is to catalyze a culture of inner well-being for all change makers. That is the aim. And if one day we find out that we achieve this, it will not need us anymore. And what I mean by this is that the aim of the Wellbeing Project is not to create a global organization that does everything and nothing about well-being, but to catalyze. So one of the key aspects of how we work is emergence. And I'm mentioning this because it's not only about what we do as a Wellbeing Project that we see is important, but also how we do it. So this piece of emergence and co-creation is two pieces I want to talk about. Emergence speaks really much to listening deeply to what are the needs of change makers. What is it that the system that we observe and the culture that we feel around us asks for in terms of well-being? That means that the structure that Ellis has presented to us, the learning and convening, the research, the model, the development programs, have been built after an extensive period of trying to understand where can we have the most effective lever, rather than saying we have an idea, we know how to go, we do it. No, we started with listening and observing. So all the research that we're also going to go just a tiny bit into is based on asking this question: how is well-being and social change connected? And starting from that point. And we feel it's so important to share this because it changes the point of starting for a social change project from this thought of, I have a solution, towards, I care about someone, I care about a community, and I want to support them. And I do this in a way that I listen, I observe, and develop from there. And we often see that this is very contrary to what, for example, public agencies or also corporations are doing. And that's why we highlight this point of emergence so much, because it's could also mean that in 5 years, the project might not even exist anymore, because either we're successful or we find other players have taken this role. The second part is co-creation. This project is co-created with a number of global networks and organizations that support social entrepreneurs. And we knew that to be systemically effective, we needed to work with all these organizations. And to me, as a young change maker, when I was 20, it was always a dream to bring these organizations together, because I felt if they don't work together, we're going to create silos. We're going to create different structures that don't really talk to one another. So it is kind of interesting to me to see that these 7 organizations that hold and create the Wellbeing Project have never collaborated on this large scale together. And now through this topic we do. And that's great to see. And it's also a reason why we were able to attract more than 200 international organizations now to jump into this movement and to prioritize well-being into their strategy, into their business case, because they see this is not about one organization trying to do something. This is about a whole network, a whole movement of people trying to shift the culture of well-being towards one that embraces resilience, mental health, and us as individuals, as human beings, again, rather than believing in the old myth that we need to sacrifice us in order to make a change in the world. So these 2 aspects, emergence and co-creation, are really fundamental in the way that we have built this project. Now, what is well-being? We don't know. And to be honest, it is still an explorative journey. We don't want to define well-being. We don't want to create another dogma where in the end somebody says, this is the way that you can achieve well-being. Because well-being, and that's what we found through our research, is a journey. And there's many different ways that we can take. So rather than saying this is well-being, we encourage people to start their own journey as an individual, as an organization, and to learn from others and find out what it means for them and how they can implement it. And there is a piece where, from the research we have done, we have seen patterns emerge. So when Ellis is now going to talk about the emerging definition of well-being, it just means that we observe patterns and we share that with you. It doesn't mean that's what well-being, but it can inspire you to reflect on well-being for you, your business, and your organization yourself. With that, over to you, Ellis.
Thank you. Yes, so there are many levels and layers to this, and we have really found that going through these journeys with leaders and with organizations as to how do we get there, how do we achieve well-being. And in the process, we learned an awful lot about what it might actually mean, but at the same time, as has been mentioned, we don't actually know. We don't have a single definition, as it were. And the project itself, therefore, doesn't prescribe to a single definition of well-being. And we really believe that each person and each organization needs to embark on their own journey and to really explore what this might mean for them in terms of embedding it into their lives and into their cultures. And it's a very, very multi-layered, interesting way of, I guess, beginning to look inwards at yourself and to be brave enough to start to do that. And also to take a look around you in where you're working, in your organizations, what things can be better, what things can be changed, and how would you go about creating a culture of well-being in your organization? And that will be very specific to the organization you're from and you're part of. So it's really about understanding that it's a journey, and we're all on this journey together, and so we all need to learn from each other at the same time. So that was a very, very key outcome of the research that we've done. And I will begin to share perhaps a little bit more about our research findings for people who might be interested. And I will just share my screen again. Here is an evidence-based change. This is before we get to more of an in-depth discussion around resilience and how we can begin to look at resilience. But this evidence-based theory of change is an outcome of all the research that we have been doing. And it's absolutely fascinating, because when people have gone through either usually through our inner development program over 18 months, often, we find that they have explained this to us, and they've really found themselves that they become kinder with themselves. And they also begin to start rejecting the hero model at work. They're able to redefine what success. And they are also able to start basically leaning on other people around them and giving other people elements of their work in an easier way. They essentially start trusting other people around them. And they're also able to start viewing other people, be it in their organizations or in their lives personally, as very, very multidimensional, colorful people who have their own lives and who have their own well-being. So actually, the way in which they started interacting with other people around them and viewing other people around them shifted. And why is that important? That's very, very important, because what it led to are changes in the way in which they led in their organization. And then we have astonishing, actually, is that starts leading to changes at a sector level, because if you start being able to listen to other organizations, work with other communities around you, you're able to start breaking down the barriers which are actually preventing social change from happening. And you're able to be much more collaborative in the way in which you approach absolutely huge societal problems or problems within how your organization is functioning. So actually what happens at an individual level brings about changes at an organizational level, and then at a sector level, and then at a societal level. So this is a huge, huge outcome of our research, and it's been proven as such, and we're still doing even more research into this, but I just thought that was very much worth sharing with you. I'll pass back. Exploring resilience as another topic.
Thank you so much, Ellis. I've seen that there's a question around what roles universities are playing and the researching and promoting well-being. And that ties into another question about the higher education initiative. So before we move into resilience as a topic, maybe you could just shortly outline the role that universities are playing and how that links into the higher education program.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a brilliant question. And we actually brought universities into one of our programs that we're working on. And it's a big, huge area of need. And so basically the universities we're not working with a huge amount of universities, but there is a big, there is a huge need that we are noticing. And so it's an area or a pillar of the project which is very much growing in terms of the work that needs to be done there. And it's very, very linked. So it's about, I guess, shifting the culture within higher education, within the initiatives which are laid out by universities, and how can we actually educate as well around well-being, and what part do those institutions have in educating society more broadly and understanding well-being more broadly, so that they're able to embed that into the rest of their lives, you know, when they stop being engaged with that university body as well. So it's a fascinating area, and it's only growing for us.
Thank you, Alice, for this. If you have follow-up questions on this around the university piece, please feel free to edit in the Q&A section. There are some questions there, which is great to see that slowly we're starting to become more interactive. I love this. So Alice has talked to us about, you know, the emerging definition of well-being, and I would love to transition us into resilience now, and the question of resilience mainly, because one of the main outcomes of the project so far is that there is a clear link between inner work, well-being, and social change. And I would love to relate to one of the questions that Janaya has brought up in the chat, because she asks about those leaders who sacrifice for the well-being of others, and says that we need to teach others to be more selfless, caring, generous, which of course means sacrifice. I think what we have learned, or what we have seen, is that it is about a balance of giving sacrifice in the sense that we care a lot about others, and we work for others, and we hold them in the intention that we do. But at the same time, if we also don't learn how to take care of ourselves and our organizations, we can come into a place where we won't be able to care and to take action anymore for others, simply because we're burning out. We face a compassion fatigue. We tend to build up structures in businesses and organizations that are exploitative and not built for the long run. And so that's what we have seen through the research. So what we mean by not sacrificing, we simply, see that there is a necessity for, while caring for others, also caring for ourselves and bringing that into a balance. And that leads into resilience, because what is happening today with COVID, in a way, Alice and me were reflecting about this before. Like, what's the role that resilience is playing in social change, and how can we tap into this? Because it seems so clear that today we need more and more to be resilient. Well, actually, think about it in another way. Ask yourself, aren't change makers, entrepreneurs, people working in the field of social change, always operating in a field of uncertainty, complexity? In the case of Ukraine, you're there yourself, even in the place of danger. Yes. So what we feel is that well-being and resilience and becoming more resilient is not something that is only important now because of COVID, but it's even more important because when we see that these global crises are accelerating, there's coming more and more, it becomes an even more important question for all of us to consider. How can we stay safe? How can we stay sane? How we can stay thriving in a context that's going to become even more complex? And that's why for our research part in the Wellbeing Project, we're starting to focus more and more on resilience, because it is actually almost like a muscle that you can train. And I like the analogy to high performance sports, because in high performance sports, practices of well-being like yoga, taking care of your physical body, of nutrition, taking care of your mental, has become completely normal, because they know that if you don't focus on that, you can't perform. So how would that be if we transform this analogy to the field of social change? If we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't train to become more resilient to the complexity around us, we might not perform at the best what we want to do, and that is take care of others and change the world. So that's where we, as the Wellbeing Project, focus more and more on what is resilience and how does it link to social change. And what we would love to do in the next 2 minutes is to invite you all to share in the chat what you see and what is your experience and how you see well-being and resilience connected. And Alice and me would just like to give these 1 or 2 minutes of silence for reflection, so you can think about how do you see and experience well-being be connected to resilience and your ability in shifting environments. And we'll just observe and see what's happening on the chat and what you are sharing. And then Alice is going to talk a little bit about what we are seeing surfacing around resilience and well-being. And thank you for all who are contributing here in the chat. It's beautiful to see what you're reflecting on. And Alice, does this give you like a good base to start sharing a little bit what is coming out in our research?
Yes, absolutely. And I have to say some of the things that are being shared here have got me reflecting myself, and it's really, really beautiful to see. Somebody has touched on something there about well-being being a kind of sense of wholeness. And that, I think, is a really beautiful, beautiful way of viewing it personally. But as we always say, it's a very personal journey. What people are touching on here, which is fascinating, is about being more able, I guess, to manage situations around them, and to become more flexible when change, external or internal change occurs. And that is really fascinating, because that is where we are finding that people in the social change sector and more broadly sometimes can really struggle. And actually, COVID is an example of a situation where so much has been changing still all around the world. And how do we get, how do we approach these ever-changing scenarios? And is there a way that we can lean on our own well-being in order to do that? So through our research, we have been focusing on I guess a little bit during times of crisis, having conversations with people who are, leaders of organizations. And it's definitely become clear that the practical needs for well-being are actually higher during times of crisis. But they really have been expressing that clear communication is really essential to help you deal with ever-changing environments. So we often find as well, working with people, that if you have stronger well-being and you're taking care of yourself better, you're able to then communicate with people better, with integrity and authenticity, and you're able to be open. So when you're not doing well with something, or with a change which is kind of shocked you, to be able to open up and share that with others, how you're feeling with others. It's easier to do that when you are practicing well-being for yourself and for others. So yeah, I guess maintaining well-being as well, leaders have also expressed that it means that they are then able to feel confident in the decisions that they are doing, which is really fascinating. So they feel that they're able to maintain wise choices because they're operating from a place of stronger well-being. So they're able to lead with a bit more clarity and openness of spirit, and able to welcome more diverse perspectives as well, if they have been doing well-being. So when they're faced with so much that is going on, and often this is just, as has been touched upon, pretty normal in the sector, because it's just always ever changing and there's so much uncertainty, this is often helpful for them to then be able to lead in what they feel is the right way to lead. And also another outcome is to do with patience. They find that they're a lot more patient generally, and able to operate from a place of calmness when things are just feeling pretty out of control and overwhelming. And you know, something that, because we also work with frontline workers, so it could be teachers, it could be nurses, certainly what has been happening now and what is happening in the sector brings about a huge, often amount of trauma. And we have to talk about this. We have to break this stigma down, and we have to be more open, you know, to these experiences of trauma that often occur. And I think there is something there about, where does that trauma go? It goes somewhere. So what we have to do is look after our well-being to ensure that we are really taking care of ourselves at the same time as we're taking care of others. So these are key insights that are coming out of the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Alice. And I would like to just address some of the questions that have been coming up and comments that have been made a bit more practically speaking. What does well-being mean on an organizational level, and resilience on an organizational level? And of course, you know, there's thousands of answers here about what, you know, possible, and even more questions to ask. But what we see is that one clue to start integrating well-being in an organization is to give it space. And that means to create spaces, safe spaces, where you can actually talk about it, where you can express how you feel about and with certain situations, where you can address concerns. So it is, and that is what we find is, you know, one of the most important things to start with in an organization, to create a space for employees, for volunteers, for stakeholders, to, you know, to simply have a space to be heard and held about that which concerns well-being for them. If you cannot talk about it openly in an organization, how can you find solutions? How can you find solutions for people burning out? Yeah. So that's one of the clues where we see that what it practically means. Give space to people to talk about it. And then one other clue that we find in our work with organizations is to not try to over strategize it or over cognitize it, but to start with micro interventions. This idea of what are very small shifts that we can do in our everyday activities as a team, as an organization, to bring in one aspect that can bring more well-being or resilience in the long run to us. One example is, in every meeting that you do, have a minute of silence before, so that people can check in with themselves. What is going through my mind? Am I here physically, or am I still in the last meeting or already in the next meeting? Yeah. Give a minute for people to talk about how they feel, how they check in, how they arrive in this session. That creates, for many people and organizations who don't do that, that already creates a change in the atmosphere, because you don't start to go straight into conversation, but you give people a time to arrive and to be fully there. Yeah. And that already is a small intervention that can change a lot. Yeah. There is, of course, learning journeys that you can go through. Yeah, and as part of the work that we do with organizations, we do, for example, a 3-month journey where we once a month we get together as organizations and talk about different needs that we have as individuals, but as teams around well-being, and each month come closer to developing a concept around well-being, because since there is no one definition of well-being, as an organization, we also first need to talk about and find what it is that it means to us. Yeah, and that is one of the challenges that we also see today in the sector, that there's the big need for what is a practical solution? How can I bring resilience to me in my organization? There is answers like I gave you, like check-ins, like processes, like giving space to it. But then ultimately, it will be you and your organization that will have to find your own way, because it's about putting the human back into the center of what you do. And there is no fixed solution for that. Yeah. So that's a little bit of, just practical clues where I would see we and us could start. Ellis, do you have something more that kind of could add to that? Because otherwise, I could also feel we could move into Q&A more, or speak about like our practical tips that we also have.
Yeah, perhaps it would be nice to follow on with that, with a few of the resources that we have, so that people know that they are available, and I'll be able to share my screen. And then following that, we can close with 1 or 2 Q&A questions, if that works. Oh. Josha, would you like to introduce a few of these?
Yes, for sure. So of course we knew that this question of where can we find more resources on what well-being means and how we can work with that. So we put together a range of resources that you can access. I'll just shortly mention them, and then you can explore after our session in the days to come. So first of all, until the end of June, there is a great series of webinars where we invite teachers from different traditions all around the world, different religions, different practices, who speak to these questions that you've been asking. It's every Tuesday evening. So this is until the end of July, I think it got extended. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ellis. So that's one, but there's also the recordings of all these sessions. So that's a great way to dive into. If you like it more scientific, there's an article series that we have launched in collaboration with the Stanford Social Innovation Review, Skoll Foundation, Schwab, and Indian Development Review, which explores all the different facets of resilience, well-being. It also, we just launched a new article around the critiques of well-being, because there is, the critique that well-being only addresses leaders and people who can afford it. And yes, that is true to a certain extent, but there is a lot that people can do without having any money around this topic. Yeah. We have created a series of interviews where senior social change leaders speak about their own experience of dealing with well-being. We did an open call for art around well-being. So we got, over the past 2 months, 10,000 of art pieces related to well-being and resilience. So if you're looking for more for an artistical and visual inspiration to also share with your communities, you can find that. And also the Wellbeing Project is online, of course. There was also the question around whether you can find the research online. Of course, it's directly on our homepage. And maybe until the end of the session, Ellis or we could just post that link to this report to the chat so that you can directly access it. We only have a couple of minutes left, so Marina, maybe there is a question that you want to ask.
Actually, I wanted to thank you for the wonderful session. If we're done with Q&A and there aren't any more questions or comments, the technical support has just warned me that they are ready to start the evaluation questionnaire. So it was just a couple of questions. Yeah, there is a comment. Thanks for the fabulous presentation. So now you can see the very short poll on the screen. It's just yes or no. Was this session useful for you, or perhaps it wasn't? So please vote. Hosts and panelists can't vote. That's a pity. Thanks for the fabulous presentation, Tatiana Pavlenko says. I guess it was.
And Marina, would that also be the place to, to say final words from Ellis on my side?
Yeah, I think so. While we are making the poll, there are a couple of minutes to summarize the session.
Alice, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today, and we hope that this session has at least provided room for you to do a little bit of reflection about what well-being means for you. It certainly has done for myself in terms of resilience and how we begin to understand that in more depth. It was a wonderful session to explore that with you, and I guess my what I would love to leave with you all is to make space for this conversation. And we really believe that all change makers in society matter, and we all need to take care of ourselves in order to be able to take care of others. Well-being inspires well-doing.
It does, and it is a long journey, and that is also my experience. That I started off with mindfulness trainings 20 years ago and yoga, and even today I don't feel I'm a master of well-being, but it's just if we can create different spaces within our organization and projects where we talk about the stuff that needs to be done, the urgent, the necessary, then if we can create for strategic things, what are, especially in these times of COVID, the key strategic initiatives that we need to take on as a project in order to be and stay relevant into the future. And then also to create a space where we can allow ourselves to take care and also to be. Yeah? And I feel that if we can have these three spaces in our organizations, at least I feel I can be more in a space of thriving and less just being on the surviving edge all the time. So me, for the moment, I just feel to say thank you that we got the space to present and place this topic at the beginning of this Ideas Festival. And thank you so much, Marina. I know that you and your team are doing incredible work also on bringing the topic of well-being and resilience to the Ukraine. And I can't wait to connect with some of you who would be interested to learn more or even to become engaged. So thank you very much. And yeah.
Thank you, Josha. Thank you, Alice. Thank you for opening actually the Ideas Festival 2020. And let's work on our well-being and let's keep resilient. For those attendees who are still with us, the next session will start in less than 5 minutes. So please stay with us. And Welcome to the next session of the Idea Fest.